Tesla, Amazon, Google, Apple, and you. What is the difference? We're going to determine and look at what makes billion-dollar companies so valuable. All right, so here we are in a Google Sheet. We're going to go over the fundamentals of billion-dollar companies. How do billion-dollar companies become so valuable? What is the value that they are creating and that they're capturing? And how can you understand how to use it for yourself? So we're going to look at 4 billion-dollar companies today and your new company that you could start. So the first thing I want to start with here is value comes from ownership. And so, of course, having ownership of something that's valuable is what makes ownership important and valuable in the first place. But the unit of ownership of a company is a share. So this is your corporations. They all are Delaware C corporations in the United States, and they have units of ownership called stock. And each stock has a price, and we're going to go into how the value is created. But if you go start a new Delaware C corporation, chances are you are going to have 10 million stock units when you begin, and the value is going to be $0.000001 per share. So, as you can see, some questions might come up. Why do these companies have so many shares? The thing is, you could create that many shares right away, but we'll talk about why they do that over time and the value that they create. So first, we're going to go into Tesla. So Tesla, we'll go over the overview of what we're going to go over here. So you have your company and then the business unit. Tesla sells other things like home solar panels, but we're just going to focus on selling cars because what we're going to start to understand is their unit economics of how they make money and how when you're going to go start a business, this math is crucial to you creating value. So for the business unit of selling cars, the unit of sale is a vehicle. And this is an estimated dollar per sale because they have expensive cars, like $100,000 or $200,000, but they also have their low-end model. We're just going to say the average dollar per sale is $45,000 that they actually sell. These numbers are real. They sold 1.3 million cars in 2022, meaning a total revenue of $59 million and profit of about $14 million. Now, the gross margin is 24.3%. Now, what is the gross margin? This is probably the first one that brings up a question. The gross margin is, let's say you're going to go sell a car. It is the revenue you get from a car minus the costs for you to sell and deliver that car. Doesn't take into account other things that are adjunct to you selling a vehicle. It is just what is it for you to, what is the value of the vehicle to the person and how much does it cost you to deliver on that. From that, you get profit. And then we're going to go back to the number of shares in the stock price. So by having $14 billion in profit, this is, of course, just one business unit. They have other business units. Then what happens is, boom, now we start to get into people wanting to own some of those shares. Because the way that wealth and value is then created is that as people buy those shares become the product that the company sells. Amazing, right? Is they sell a car, but the product that they also sell, which creates the most value, is ultimately the share unit. And that's a unit of ownership of what Tesla does, the activity that Tesla does, and the volume of money and profit that they generate. From there, in this equation of hype and demand and public markets, that's how you get your share price. And that taking the number of shares times the stock price gives you the enterprise value of Tesla. That's the actual enterprise value right there. So what is the overview of this? How do you build a billion-dollar company? Well, you find a product that you can deliver. So you have that product becomes a business unit, whatever that unit of sale is. Then you would know how much you can sell that for. What is the value that you can capture and create for the person? So, for example, for a vehicle, if you are looking at getting a Tesla, well, let's say you make $200,000 a year, you have the money to go and buy a Tesla. So the value that Tesla is able to capture is actually unit and a mechanism of how much money you have available to spend on a vehicle. And then the value it provides to you is, well, if the car gets you to your job and your job makes you $15,000, $20,000 a month, well, as you can see, the value is far going to outweigh what the cost of that vehicle is. Of course, that's just quantitatively. But if we get into qualitative things, that's a whole nother object. Just like when you get into the stock price is not a simple this times that equals the stock price. It is really, ultimately, you can deduce it to that equation, but the stock price is truly influenced by the demand for the unit of ownership. So when people, for example, with GameStop, when GameStop had a lot of shorts, people who were saying that the stock was going to go down to the degree where the amount of existing shares that were being pressed down was greater than the total number of existing shares that could be purchased, there was a dissonance, meaning that the shorts, there was too much pressure down. And therefore, when people realize that, they realize that if the demand goes up, then the people who are short have to rebuy those shares if the price exceeds that. We're not going to get into that, maybe in another video. But the point is that the hype became so strong around GameStop that people were willing to pay $1,000 a share or $800 or $500 a share because it was possible that it could actually go to that level. And that's where we add the human element into how you create a valuable company. Of course, you still have to have strong fundamentals. But if we look at things like cryptocurrencies, the hype is so strong and the fundamentals are so low, and that's where you get things that fall. So the key is of this video, build things with strong fundamentals with good business models, and you will take that is your road. But there's not only one way to do this. You can do this in so many ways, and that's what's important and lovely about building companies is you can build so much value. There's so much value to be created out there in the world. In fact, it's basically infinite, because just because someone purchases something doesn't mean that more value can't be created by you creating something that doesn't exist. And all of a sudden, you've now created additional value. That's kind of called the pie fallacy. Definitely suggest you look it up. Perhaps I'll talk about it in another video. But let's get into some other ways you can make enormous amounts of money. So Amazon, they sell items. The unit of sale is an order. The average dollar per sale is $47.31. They did $247 billion of revenue. This is for their first-party sales. There are there's also third-party sellers. They have their Amazon Web Services. Now you start to see, well, if you have one business that works. So for example, when it was Amazon, and you have one business unit that works. When it was Amazon in the early stages, they were just selling books. And then they added another category, and they added another category, and they added another category. And so all together, that became and how now is their e-commerce category. But then again, they have first party, which makes up a subunit of that, and then third party, which is actually more than their first party sales. And then from there, they have Amazon Web Services, and they have now Prime Video. So you see how each one of those has its own business unit, and it complements the next, because every person who wants to watch the Lord of the Rings that was on Prime Video, and maybe they don't order from Amazon, well, chances are if they now have to get Prime to watch that, well, that they're going to go back to Amazon. So you see how these business units can complement each other as is. But the thing is about Amazon is that based off their industry, their business model, what they're doing, their gross margin is much lower, but their volume, of course, look, this is 5 billion in orders. Then you can see they actually had more profit from this business unit than Tesla did, for example. Hence, they're a more valuable company. But of course, there's a lot of things that can go into that. Next, total number of shares, you get your stock price, and there you are. You have a $1.3 trillion company when you add all those things up. Now let's go into Google. So the key point I want everybody to realize about this one here is that, look, you could capture such a small amount of money, but if you can do that 3 trillion times, well, you make a lot of money. In fact, 155 billion. It actually was 162 billion in 2022 with very high profit margin. So if you, for example, have something that's totally automated in this case, right? And it's user driven. So people go, they're going to search, and it happens anyways. It's a happenstance thing. You're going to do a search, and Google's going to get paid for it. So from there, again, you could capture a tiny little amount of value from a ton of transactions and have an extremely valuable company. And then let's go into Apple, everyone's favorite, aside from yourself, of course. So Apple, this is just modeling the iPhone sales. I think this is the most accurate of them all. So the iPhone sales, about $1,100, $1,200 per iPhone. They did 200 million in 2022. And then from there, that's $240 billion of revenue with good profit margins. And you add in, now let's talk about the other component of this. Well, what is, and the other component that we mentioned, what is Apple's delivery mechanism? Well, it's the phone. So your phone then does what? Your phone houses apps, and Apple makes a ton of money from the transactions that happen on the App Store. In fact, 30% was the last rate. And then the next thing, well, you have music, and then you have entertainment, and then all these other things. So the whole point is that phone is your doorway to all of these transactions and things that exist. Then you have your Apple Card, right? So they've taken that one mechanism, and then they've added on all the other things that you're going to do anyways when you have that phone, you're going to want to do. And that's how they've created such enormous value. The brand value of Apple is also unprecedented. So these are the things that are happening. They start with an additional a core business unit, and then all of a sudden, by having high profit margins and building a very enduring company and building the company in the right way, well, what happens is they have the opportunity to expand into so much more that all of a sudden, I have an iPhone here sitting next to me. I do everything. I'm sitting here on an MacBook. Everything occurs on this platform, and so that is how you create enormous value. So trillions of dollars in this case. This is far beyond billion, but let's get into the last example. So you're watching this video, you want to start a company, you're going to sell something, and that unit of sale is your thing, and your dollar per sale. Basically what I'm saying, to save the words, is that this is where you begin. You start to look at what is it that you could sell. Maybe you're going to do, a whole host of things. I'm not even going to go into any. You're going to go into a whole potential host of opportunities that you can do. And that is where you begin. And your stock price might be infinitesimal compared to the others, but over time, with consistency, focus, action, effort, and all the things that go into building a company, which are going to be covered in other videos, you can create enormous value. So there are companies, for example, Deal is a company that has been around for just 3 years, 4-ish now. And what they've done is they're now at $300 million a year in annual revenue. They were the fastest company ever to do that, fastest growing company ever. So the biggest, fastest growing companies are not even built yet. And so even though we're starting at this small little thing, you could be there. And that is the primary takeaway of this video. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Go ahead and click on the next one, and let's keep diving in about how you can build an extremely valuable business and a happy life.